death and resurrection of Moses. We read the verse. After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord spoke to Joshua the son of Nun, servant of Moses, saying, My servant Moses is killed, now therefore arise, pass over this Jordan, you and all this people, to the land which I give to the children of Israel. Do the above two verses prohibit Moses from being resurrected? So Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, as the Lord said, who buried him in the valley, in the land of Moab, in front of Beth-Peor, and no one has yet known the place of his grave. Moses was 120 years old when he died, his sight had not been darkened, nor had his vigor fled. See the verse in Deuteronomy. How did the people know that Moses had died if he left and no one saw Moses' grave? So God after Moses' death spoke to Joshua, who spoke to the people, and the people did the following. The children of Israel mourned Moses for 30 days in the plains of Moab, and the days of weeping and mourning for Moses were fulfilled. So we have another fact. But when the archangel Michael, arguing with the devil, disputed about the body of Moses, he did not dare to pronounce a curse judgment against him, but said, The Lord rebuke you. When did archangel Michael argue with the devil? Now after the death of Moses. When did this happen? Then, before, or in the period that God said to Joshua, Moses, my servant, is slain. Was it forbidden to resurrect Moses after that? Of course not. Moses could have been resurrected at any time after Michael took Moses' body. No one knew when and where Moses had died. So only God to warn. How long did it take God to warn you? It may have been on time, a few hours later. In other words, at any moment God could say that Moses had died. Was there a law that forbade Moses to be resurrected? There is no law that prohibits Moses' resurrection. How long to resurrect Moses? Now any time after telling Joshua. Now Joshua could have been warned at the time of Moses' death. And there the people mourned the demarcated days. For if nobody tells you that Moses died, nobody mourns. If you don't know about death, how will you mourn death? So there is no prohibition for Moses to be resurrected. So we have. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking to him. Peter, taking the floor, said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you want, I will make 3 huts here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Here we have that Moses and Elijah were talking to Jesus. And the disciples had seen them both. So both Moses and Elijah were alive. How was Moses alive? Now a person who dies and lives is because he was resurrected. As there is no prohibition on Moses' resurrection, Moses was resurrected. We see it now no longer in Matthew but in Mark. And Elijah appeared to them with Moses, and they were talking with Jesus. Peter, taking the floor, said to Jesus, Master, it is good for us to be here, so let us make 3 huts, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For he did not know what to say, because they were frightened. See that it was possible to interact with Jesus while he was talking to Elijah and Moses. See that it is possible for Jesus to have talked for a long time with Moses and Elijah, because neither in Mark nor in Matthew does he say how long it lasted. But it took the necessary time for Peter to think that it was necessary to build huts because of the night, which is presumed that Jesus had a long conversation. If it were something quick, the disciples would just say, but no, which is about having time for the case to occur. Let's see now in Lucas. And, behold, 2 men, Moses and Elijah, were talking to him, who appeared with glory, and spoke of his departure which was to be fulfilled in Jerusalem. Now Peter and those with him had been overcome by sleep, but when they awoke, they saw his glory and the two men who were with him. And when they departed from him, Peter said to Jesus, "Master, it is good for us to be here. Let us therefore make 3 huts, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah," not knowing what he was saying. See that Peter and the disciples were sleeping. How long did they sleep? It seems to have been a long time. And then they saw the 2 men. As they knew it was Moses and Elijah, there was no camera at the time. The only way is that Jesus said, or they did. The best possibility is that the disciples asked and Jesus answered who they were. So we have that Moses was resurrected and was with Elijah talking to Jesus for a long time. Theologians say. A commentary on the Old and New Testaments by Robert Jameson, R. Fawcett and David Brown. There talked with him 2 men. Moses and Elias. Appeared in glory. Who would have believed these were not angels had not their human names been subjoined? Moses represented the law, Elijah the prophets, and both together the whole testimony of the Old Testament scriptures, and the Old Testament saints, to Christ, now not born in a book, but by living men, not to a coming, but a come Messiah, visibly, for they appeared, and audibly.